Hello everyone and welcome back to Motorcast, and today we are here with our first F2 discussion as we'll be previewing the 2017 season kicking off in a couple of weeks when we're recording this in Bahrain and finishing in a few months time in November in Abu Dhabi. It's an 11 round season this year, and today I'm joined by Josh, and you can find both our Twitters of course down in the description. So getting straight on into things here and looking back at last season. Obviously, the last year with the old GP2 name before we rebranded, and we saw a brilliant battle for the championship, mainly between Pierre Gasly and Antonio Giovinazzi for the title, and it proved to be a real breakthrough year actually in terms of the excitement of GP2/F2 racing, with a lot of memorable races last year.
Yeah, definitely. GP2 was fantastic last year. Like you said, with the Gasly-Giovinazzi battle, Markelov winning in Monaco, there was some really, really special scenes. You know, Giovinazzi coming from the back to win in his home event in Monza was pretty special as well. So plenty of really, really good moments.
Yeah, it was a fantastic season last season, I have to say, and a lot of people commenting on how GP2 was perhaps more exciting than F1 last year. So another thing with F2 is that we see a virtually new grid every single year, with a lot of the title contenders moving on. Obviously, I think it's the top four in the championship from last season no longer on the grid this year. So what are you expecting this year in terms of a title battle and the close racing that we saw last year? Do you think that'll carry on?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I think that's definitely going to carry on. Very, very high quality grid. Like you said, we are losing quite a lot of the big names from last year, but they're being replaced by the likes of Charles Leclerc, Louis Delatraz, Alexander Albon. So there's a lot of really big names in there. In terms of a title battle, it's basically going to be, I think, the battle between the rookies like Leclerc, who's looking to probably become the first rookie champion since Hulkenberg in 2009. Versus the experienced guys, the returning guys like Oliver Rowland at Dams. He's probably going to be one of the pre-season title favourites, along with of course the two Prema guys, just because of how dominant Prema were last year, of course in their first year in the sport as well. So in terms of a title battle, I'm expecting the battle of the rookies between maybe Leclerc, Fauco, versus the more established guys such as Ollie Rowland.
Obviously, we had a very exciting 2016 season, and this year we've got a lot of drivers such as Markelov, Matsushita, Jordan King, Luca Giotto, and so on, all looking to kick on and maybe make that next step. And you could possibly say with some of them, it's maybe their last chance to try and make that step kind of into at least a test drive for F1 and a main drive itself. And obviously, as you said, we've of course got some very highly rated talents such as Leclerc, Nick de Vries, Fauco, Albon, Boschung, all coming into the grid this year for their first season. So I think we could be on for a very, very exciting battle. Obviously, none of the kind of the established title contenders from last season, so it's going to be a very, very open one. I think you have to look at Prema really as the early favourites. It's very, very difficult to say. Obviously, no real favourites from testing, but Prema with Gasly and Giovinazzi last season were very, very strong indeed. But we also had some other major players such as Sirotkin, Lin, Marciello, Evans, and obviously the Carlin team especially also moving on. So you said we've got the Prema boys as the early title favourites, but is there anyone who really stands out for you? We've got the Racing Engineering boys. Do they stand out possibly as early favourites?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Racing Engineering, because kind of on paper it probably looks like, with all due respect to both their drivers, probably one of their weaker lineups, just due to their inexperience of both of the guys. But I think both of them are vastly underrated, and I think they'll probably burst onto the scene this year, because I think probably a lot of people probably haven't heard probably of either of them. But Delatraz of course was fantastic in Renault 3.5, or of course Formula V8 3.5 rather, last year of course, and narrowly missed out on the title there. Gustav Mallier as well, of course, moving across from Rapax, who had I think a really strong end to the season in 2016, so I think he might be able to carry that on. And Racing Engineering maybe a bit of a dark horse, and also Russian time as well. Luca Giotto, of course, great driver, vastly underrated, until of course that breakout GP3 season, and now he's very much on many people's radars. And I think he could probably be the championship dark horse, to be honest, because he's coming to his second year now in the sport. He's got Markelov as a teammate as well, who's coming into his fourth year. So yeah, Markelov and Giotto, I mean, that could be a real dark horse team. And possibly even, I would suggest that Russian time could be one of their favourites for the Constructors' Championship if they can get it together, in particular on the qualifying, because we certainly know that both of them are very, very racy.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see. I mean, if we have a look at pre-season testing, all the focus was on the Premier Boys, as we've already touched on, but there was no real trend in the times, really. I mean, all the rookies did quite well. I suppose Nick De Vries looked quite strong. The Rapax team looked fairly strong, with also Latifi, and the Dams team looked fairly good as well. So, how do you think the rookies will find the transition from GP2 into GP3 into F2?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I mean, you've got guys like Boschong, who relatively is fairly inexperienced compared to some of the other rookies. You do have these rookies, but quite a few of them have a fair bit of experience. You know, Nick De Vries especially. He's raced in 3.5, he's raced in GP3, so he knows, you know, of course, a lot about racing, and he's got very good experience despite being a rookie. So I think De Vries probably will do one of the best of the rookies, along with Leclerc and Fualco as well. So I think I expect to see those three in particular being very, very strong as rookies. Then I expect kind of Delitraz and Boschong to kind of get better as the season goes on. And of course, Alexander Albon as well, I can't forget. He's very easy to overlook this season, but of course he was right with Leclerc in GP3 last year. So maybe expect... I mean, it's very, like I said, it's very, very hard to predict, to be honest. There are so many rookies that really could be taking either the championship or that slot as the best rookie. So, expect a good performance as well from Alexander Albon. Don't be counting him out. And, of course, alongside him as well, Matsushita. Like you said, last chance saloon, I think, it's got to be now for Matsushita. He's got his third year in what is one of the best teams on the grid. So, really, he doesn't have any more excuses. He's really, really got to deliver.
Yeah, safe to say Matsushita's had his ups and downs in his time in F2.
Yeah, obviously that Baku weekend was a certain down, but hopefully he can get back from that, because really I think that really ruined his season last year. He never really fully recovered from that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was one of the standout moments of last season. Really, it's one of those moments where he's got to try and put it behind him this year. And because at the moment, I'd say when you think of Matsushita, that's kind of the moment that everyone thinks of. He's kind of got to prove everyone wrong now. It's kind of like Maldonado, where you just think of his incidents. It's got to be the same with Matsushita going into this year. He has to put in a few strong performances and some outstanding drives to kind of make people forget that. As for the rookies, you mentioned Albon. I saw quite a lot of him actually last year, and he was very, very strong. He's got the ability actually to dominate races as soon as he gets to the front. I think people have likened him to Sebastian Vettel quite a lot. When he gets to the front, it's just so difficult to beat due to his consistency. I can't see any reason why most of the rookies can't settle in. I think the only exception is Sergio Sette Camara, who's not making the transition from GP3 to F2. He's coming from the European F3 Championship, but a lot of these guys have raced with each other before. They've all proved their worth in the lower category, so I can't see any reason why they won't settle in fairly quickly. So we've had a bit of a look now at the Premier Boys and the Racing Engineering Boys. So what about from a British perspective? No Alex Lynn this year. What do you think we'll see from Jordan King and Ollie Rowland this year?
Yeah, a big title push, I think, from both of them. Particularly Rowland. I can't see, to be honest, King challenging for the title, just because he's in that MP Motorsport team. But he can make a good name for himself. I don't think he has a future in Formula 1, especially now Manor are gone. So this year is all about him showing what he can do, basically, not to the guys in Formula 1, but to the guys in other series. And possibly, maybe even mid-season, he'll be looking across to have a few kind of drives in the World Endurance Championship, for example. But yeah, Ollie Rowland, this is his big year. He's got to really win the title this year if he does want to move up into Formula 1. I think a career probably in Formula E or in sports cars is more likely, but he'll do himself many favours if he wins the title this year. He is 24, so he's probably the most experienced driver on the grid in terms of being racing in a lot of different series. He is, of course, the champion over in 3.5 as well, so he'll be the first driver to win both Renault 3.5 and, of course, this GP2 F2 championship, so that would be quite something. I think that would really make some of the top teams notice. I mean, to be fair as well, he's only in his second full season. He's not like, Johnny Cecotto or Kanamasa, so he's not that experienced, but he is very experienced now, and he's got to step up this year, and I think he will, to be honest, because Dams, of course, have had great success in the past. A bit of a wobble recently, especially last year. That was very disappointing, but they're going to come back fighting.
Yeah, I think both of them really just need to have another consistent year. I think King is quite unlucky not to be in F1, obviously, with the demise of Manor. Obviously, that step from F2 to F1 is a bit of a lottery now, we have to say, having seen what's happened with Stroll and Verstappen recently. So, I think they've just got to be kind of consistent. Rowland, like you said, has to really win the title, and I think his best hope is really following in the footsteps of Jolyon Palmer. We'll come on to that thing a bit later, actually, about that step from F2 to F1. But Ollie Rowan, like you said, really, really needs to be winning the championship this year. His connections with Renault could really help, especially if Palmer is going to get kicked out. He needs to really establish himself in there this season. Moving on now anyway to Campos Racing, where they've got Boschong, and as we were discussing earlier, they actually only confirmed their second driver very, very late, Raoul Hyman, who I'll be honest, I've never heard of before he's coming to F2 this season. So, but Campos, they went about their business fairly quietly in pre-season. They were kind of consistently in the top 10, especially in the Bahrain test. So what do you make of them this season? What could they achieve? Obviously, you know Ralph Boschung quite well, having interviewed him before. So, so what do you think they can do this season with two new drivers?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, I think, for them. I think it's very much going to be a bit of a building, at least, a building start to the season. I wouldn't expect, results right from the off. They've had some very, very talented drivers in the past and have had some very kind of surprise results, so maybe we will see that later on in the season as well. And I think Boschong, of course, does have the kind of potential to really grow into a very, very good driver. Of course, only 19 years old as well, which is pretty young for F2. And of course, same with Raoul Hyman as well. Quite a young driver lineup down at Campos. Obviously, they have got Boschong, and maybe Raoul Hyman is probably not with all due respect him, the ideal driver they were looking for, possibly. But it is the driver they've ended up with, and I think they will do a decent job. But I think I think they are going to struggle this year, to be honest with them being. Like you said, from testing as well. You can't read too much into that, but it didn't look too great. But yeah, like I said, I think still a few surprise results, but I think mainly points will just be their target, at least for the first half anyway.
So elsewhere, we've got Russian Time and the ART team. So Russian Time, on paper, they've got a very, very strong lineup in Giotto and Markelov, and ART, obviously, with Matsushita, who we've already touched on, and the rookie Alexander Albon. Would you expect more from those two teams, particularly ART, given their past history?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is the season really where we're going to see the kind of the classic, ART dams really bringing it back to the front. And I think, like Roland's a man to lead dams, is Matsushita the man to lead ART? I'm not quite sure. And obviously Albon's a rookie, so I think, to be honest, they're going to have another kind of third, fourth in the Constructors' year, to be honest. But, you never know. Hopefully Matsushita will get it together, and hopefully Albon will put on a good display as a rookie, and maybe even a surprise championship for them, because, of course, the last rookie to win, GP2 or F2 was Nico Hülkenberg, and, of course, that was driving for ART. So if anyone can do it, it's probably going to be Albon and ART, but, of course, it's going to be another Leclerc versus Albon battle, which should be pretty entertaining.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, actually, carrying on the rivalry from GP3 that we saw last season. So Albon, obviously, we've got a lot of talent, but ART really do seem to be lacking kind of a lead driver in there and someone who can take the team forward. I wouldn't put Matsushita down as a championship contender due to his lack of consistency, and Albon, again, although he's very, very highly rated, I do have a lot of respect for him. Maybe it's going to be tough to win the title in his first season. As for Russian Time, Giotto and Markelov, that is a very, very good driver lineup. I do like that quite a lot. There's still F1 hopes for both of them, although they do seem to be dwindling. So they both need a very, very strong year this season. Obviously, Markelov staying with the team, I think he could be a bit of a dark horse this season, actually. So we've touched on Dams and MP Motorsport due to the British connection. So we've got Trident with Jeffrey and Kanamassas, Rapax with De Vries and Chicotto, and Arden with Nato and Gilal. So what do you make of their chances this season?
We'll start off with Trident, probably, with all due respect, the worst driver lineup on the grid. No dancing around it, to be honest. Nabil Jeffrey looked at pretty out of his depth. Last year he did get he got a result, and of course that was in Baku when pretty much everyone else retired. But he kind of showed progress towards the end of last year. But to be honest, he was out of his depth in F2. But he's back again this year, so. I'm sure he'll have fun, hopefully. I'm going to hopefully continue to develop. But, Trident have basically rooted themselves to the foot of the Constructors' Championship, which is a shame, especially, of course, they had Giotto last year. And Kanamassas, of course, entering another season in GP2. And, you really can't get rid of him. But to be fair, he's a solid driver. He's a solid yardstick. If it was for a future F1 talent, he'd be a great kind of yardstick. But, unfortunately, it's not with Jeffrey. So, yeah, I think overall it's a pretty poor lineup, and can't expect too much from them. Rapax, I definitely expect quite a bit from them, to be fair, because, Nick De Vries, as I think we talked about, of course, McLaren young driver, and really this might be his last chance, even though it's his first year in GP2, in F2 rather. He's he's had quite a few chances and he's had quite a few disappointing seasons, so he does need to step up, I think, this year. He was outshone by Leclerc and Albon in GP3 last year, so this is his chance in a much smaller team, in a much more unfancied team, to get quite a few surprise results. Can't see a championship challenge, but could certainly see kind of a similar role to what kind of Giotto was doing last year, or kind of what, I mean, Pique and Malia were there, of course, at Repax last year, so if he can beat their kind of points tallies, that would be a good yardstick. And Johnny Cecotto as well, talking of yardsticks, I like him more than kind of Massas, to be honest, because, you know, although he is, been in GP2 since 2009, I want to say, he does get the results, and he got a podium in Abu Dhabi, and he's looked strong throughout testing. So I think actually Repax might actually be pretty good this year. They found a secret to the Pirelli tyres in the second half of last year, and if they can continue to work that out, because of course it is pretty much the same tyres as last year, then I think they could be kind of top 5 contenders, maybe even for the constructors. They'll certainly, hopefully, improve on where they finished last year. So good year, I think, for Repax. Not a good year for Trident. Better year, hopefully, for Arden, because they've got Norman Natter in one of the cars. But then again, not so good because they've got, with all due respect again, to Sean Gelael in the other car, who, to be fair, did get a podium in Austria, although it was kind of completely down to strategy. He did do a good job. He is only 20, and he showed signs of improvement, to be fair, when maybe a few of the others didn't. So yeah, let's wait and see, to be honest, on Sean Gelael, and I really do wish him the best of luck, because, to be fair, he is a great guy, but you know, results quite aren't there. He is out of his depth, but he's there at least, making up the numbers. So hopefully he can have another couple of surprise results. And yeah, Nato, of course, I do rate him pretty highly. He is very experienced, 24. I guess similar kind of experience level to Ollie Rowland. Not quite on the same level. Did have a bit of a breakout year last year. But back at Arden, he's not going to be able to match what he did last year. He won't be able to push for the title, I'm going to say it now, unfortunately. The Arden team is just, unfortunately, not where it used to be.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on most counts there. I think Trident was the one that stood out for me when that was announced. That's by far the weakest lineup. I'm sorry, but Jeffrey and Canamassas, I don't know what they're expecting from that. With all due respect, I just can't really see either of them doing too much this season. Rapax, I did mention earlier about how they've been actually quite quick in testing, particularly Nick de Vries. He's shown some very, very good pace, and like you said, with his McLaren links, he could be one to watch this season, actually. I think Nick de Vries, he's had his moments in GP3, and obviously with a very, very experienced teammate, to say the least, in this category, like Johnny Cecotto, it'll be interesting to see what he can do. I think Cecotto's chances of getting any higher than F2 are now gone. It's safe to say after will be his 9th season? 8th, 9th season in
yeah, 8th I think, I don't know, but way too many, but it's still good to have him, to be fair, but you know.
And then as for Arden, Norman Nato, that's a very, very good one driver anyway, because I think I'm right in saying he is the highest from the championship last season, the highest returning driver to be on the grid this season. Obviously Gilao, not the biggest name, but it'll be interesting to see what he can do with a good solid driver like Nato in the team with him. That's all the teams previewed now. So if you look at F2 and GP2, a good way to kind of preview a season is to look back at the achievement of previous drivers and compare them with what current drivers might be able to do. So is there anyone on this year's grid who'd stand out to you as a potential F1 talent in the future?
Charles Leclerc, of course, I think is the name. Well, it's the top of the entry list and the top of, I think, many people's list for future F1 talent. So I won't talk too much about him. I think he's pretty much guaranteed, if he does the job this year, to get a seat either Sauber or Haas by the next kind of 3 years. He's a big talent for Alco. This is definitely his last chance, I think. He was overshone in the last 2 years in GP3. I'm surprised, to be honest, that Ferrari did keep him on as a young driver. But he has got another shot, so he's got to kind of beat Leclerc, otherwise I don't really see how he can get into F1. Deli Tries, of course, is no longer working with Renault, so he'll have to have a good year to kind of get back on the books. But I think he's possibly is one. I'm looking further down, you've got Giotto. He's very much not 50-50 really. If he won the title this year, he'd definitely be kind of in contention, because he is still pretty young. And of course got those Italian links as well, so maybe a certain team in red might be fairly attracted to him. Artem Markelov, I can't see it happening, to be honest, as much as I think quite a few of us would like to see it. Albon definitely, could be there or thereabouts if he has a decent time. Masashita, if he was to finish, say, top 5 in the championship, maybe Honda would, manage to prize him in somewhere, maybe kind of a Sauber team if they were supplying them with engines for 2018. Rowland again, even if he wins the championship, I'm not really sure. Maybe possibly replacing Palmer, but I think Formula E is more likely for him. And then, of course, we talked about De Vries, may possibly with McLaren. We'll have to see about that one. But yeah, I think basically it's Leclerc who's the biggest, probably maybe the only person who's going to get to F1, which is fairly depressing, to be honest. That's how it could actually work out with so few seats. It might just be Leclerc, but yeah, plenty of guys there. Some I didn't even mention, but could certainly get to Formula 1. But yeah, probably Leclerc is the most likely.
Yeah, there isn't that many recently who've gone on to do great things in F1. That's something we're going to come on to in a minute. But like you said, Leclerc is the one who has to stand out with, no pun intended, the Haas links. But obviously he could have gone into F1 last season, but Magnussen took that seat in the end, which I think is actually probably going to be a good thing for him. I guess you have to look at the two Brits. Jordan King, maybe his chance is gone now, unfortunately, with the demise of Manor. But you have to look at Ollie Rowland still. With a chance. Fuoco and Giotto with the Italian links as well. Possibly Ferrari could do something there. I think Latifi has to be disappointed that he's not the Canadian heir to Jacques Villeneuve, really. Now Stroll's got in there before him, considering where Stroll's come from. But I think you have to look at Albon as well. He's got a lot of talent. We've got a lot of the rookies coming in this year. We'll be hoping, especially the younger ones, we'll be hoping to do something special. And then I think the only other really hope is, you touched on this as well, the Honda link, unless it's a very, very long shot, if maybe Alonso pulls out and then Button chooses obviously not to come back, there's a very, very long shot. But if Honda were to do something with Matsushita with the Japanese link, or obviously Nick De Vries being a test driver, I think that's the only real hope there, I have to say. But so this is a question about kind of F2 overall. So when GP2 first started, it was where you kind of got the future champions, as they were all known. So you had your Hamiltons, Rosbergs, Hulkenberg, Grosjean, Perez now as well, all done very well. But that was quite a long time ago now, because recently there haven't really been that many successful drivers that have gone from GP2 F2 into F1 and done very well. Obviously recently we've had Palmer and Nasser, who had a fantastic title fight in 2014, but neither have shone in F1 at all really. And obviously we've had Maldonado. Van Dorn's only just come in, so we'll have to see what he can do. And the one that stands out for me is Fabio Lima. He was absolutely brilliant, but I have no idea where he's gone to now. So logically you'd say that Pierre Gasly should go straight into an F1 seat, really, having won the GP2 title last season. But unfortunately that's just not how it works these days. Obviously, discounting Giovinazzi, who's a test driver for Sauber, only racing because of Wehrlein's injury. So there's a lot of drivers now these days getting into F1 without actually going through kind of the GP2 or F2 phase. So obviously the ones that stand out, Verstappen and Lance Stroll. Nothing against them, I do rate them very, very highly. But with bearing that in mind, where do you see the future of F2 going after this? With all these drivers coming in from, say, GP3, Formula European Championships, Formula 3.5, will F2 go back to how it once was in the late 2000s?
I think there's the potential for that to happen, certainly. I think we're going to judge it, in 3 years' time. Because basically the current GP3 contract kind of runs out at the end of 2018. For the kind of cars, the teams have already paid for all the cars, and there's pretty much quite a lot of ties there, which can't really be easily broken. So basically what they're going to do is apparently is going to combine F3 and GP3 into one series, which hopefully will kind of increase the quality of the grid and also kind of increase the size, which means you won't kind of get this kind of sidestep in just doing F3, GP3 then F1. It will probably make it more streamlined, so drivers are going to have to kind of go into F2. You mentioned obviously Verstappen and Stroll, and really both of them were major anomalies. Verstappen, of course, was a huge talent, and really someone had to snap him up and promote him instantly. Otherwise, some other team would offer him a gig. So, obviously, he was a bit of an anomaly. Stroll, of course, as well, because if he hadn't had all that cash, he would have got to Formula One. But I don't think he'd have got into Formula One this year. So, both of them were kind of anomalies. Esteban Ocon proved that you don't really have to go into F2. Possibly, if you do win, F3 and GP3, which of course is quite rare. But for me, basically, the way to fix F2 is to fix F1, because if you have more seats, if you have a healthier grid, which choose drivers based on talent, then you're going to get more drivers from F2 being promoted. into Formula 1, because we hopefully have 12, 13 teams with 24, 26 seats, and they're going to be promoting rookies pretty constantly. And of course, if you look last year, which rookies are you going to sign up? You're going to look at the likes of Gasly, Giovinazzi, Strock, and of course all from GP2 F2. So yeah, I think there's not a major problem with Formula 2 at the moment, but I think the problems in Formula 1 are certainly kind of leaking down and hurting F2. Having said that, 10 teams in F2 isn't great. It would be good if they could try and get a few more teams. How they're going to manage that, I'm not quite sure, but hopefully these new regulations next year will be cost effective and hopefully attractive to new teams.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think the problems with F1 are kind of the main source with the problems in F2. You've just got money playing such a big part in F1 now. Well, I'm not suggesting anyone on the F1 grid is a pay driver. It still does have an influence. Obviously, I do rate Lance Stroll very, very highly, but at the same time, he's admitted it himself. Money has had an influence in him getting up into F1. And I think also another thing is these young driver programs, particularly, obviously the standout one is Red Bull, spotting these talents now so early, much earlier, before they get into F2, and obviously not just Verstappen, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz as well. However, I believe it's a bit harder to get a super license now. I could be wrong in saying that. So that could help with the drivers progressing through the tiers, as they might have to really, because simply they can't get into F1 due to the regulations, like you touched on, the healthier grid. I think we do have a team dropping out for F2 this season. So that's, well, never good really, because the more drivers the better really, and the healthier the grid. So with that sorted, finally a few final predictions for the season. So I'm going to ask you, who's going to be your champion, your best rookie, obviously could be the same, and your dark horse for the season?
Right, okay, I'll work backwards. Do dark horse. I think Luca Giotto would be a pretty good bet for a surprise champion, possibly. Teams, if we're going to do that one, no, that's a tough one, to be honest. I'm going to back Kramer to win back-to-back championships. I'm going to stick with that one. And then, best rookie, I'm going to go Leclerc, and then I'm going to go for champion. I'm going to go with Ollie Rowland to bring the title back to Downs for the first time since 2014. That'll be, I think, a pretty special, pretty good for Rowland. But I think it could be absolutely open, like we said at the start. There's so many drivers you can pick from. So yeah, to recap, best rookie is going to be Leclerc. The team champions are going to be Kramer. The drivers champion is going to be Rowland, and the dark horse is going to be Giotto.
Oh, you almost had the exact same as me, actually. For my dark horses, I couldn't choose between... I think Gustav Mallier is going to have quite a good year this year, making the step up. I think we could see a bit more from him this year than we have done before. And also Nick de Vries coming into GP2 this year. Been very, very strong so far, so I can't see any reason why he can't have a strong season. Best rookie, you have to really say Charles Leclerc for that one. He's just obviously the standout talent coming into GP2 this year. F2, sorry. I must remember to call it F2 rather than GP2. And yeah, team champions, I am going to go for Dams, and for drivers champion, it is very, very close to call, but I would have to agree with you and say Ollie Rowland for that one. And that's it, I think. So Ollie Rowland. So there's so many to choose from really. Rowland, Leclerc. You got the ART boys this season as well, and obviously all the rookies coming in. It's ridiculously close to call, but it could be any one of about 10 drivers really, but Ollie Rowland really is the one with his experience now of F2. I think could be his year this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a pretty solid prediction, and like we said, possibly could be his last chance to get into Formula 1, but even if not that, then it's a good springboard into other things.
Anyway, I think that's going to be it for this podcast. So we're back in a couple of weeks reviewing the first race in Bahrain. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have, make sure to leave a like, and also check out both of our Twitters in the description. Also leave your thoughts on the new season in the comments down below, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.